In this movie I'd like to introduce three new tools that are appearing in Vectorworks Architect Australia and Vectorworks Landmark Australia 2012. In Architect and Designer, these tools will appear in the MEP tool palette, and you'll see them here: electrical services, plumbing services, and site services. In the Landmark workspace, the tools are in site planning for the site services and in the building tool set for electrical services and plumbing services. Now, I know that not a lot of landscape designers and architects do electrical and plumbing services, but some of you do, and particularly with outdoor lighting and stuff becoming more popular, I thought it was appropriate to at least include the electrical services and to about the same extent plumbing services as well. Now, these three tools are essentially just accessing library files, but they've got a bit more oomph than just normally creating a symbol and dropping a symbol in, and you'll see why that is in a moment. There'll be other movies in this set that kind of go into more detail about how to set up the symbols and so on. This is just an overview to give you an idea, and if you're interested then you can explore it a bit further. So as I mentioned, these are coming from some library files that we've created. So if I go to the Vectorworks folder, and this is on a Mac, but it's exactly the same on Windows. In Windows, this folder is in Program Files. On the Mac, this folder is in Applications. If we look in Libraries, and then in Defaults, you'll see that there's a new folder in here called Services, and then a subfolder called Electrical, Plumbing, and Site, and in each of those are the files that contain the symbols that we've defined. Now, you can add to these files if you want to. You can edit these files. If you put your own files into these folders, then those symbols in those files will also appear in the tools in Vectorworks. So let's just take a look at one object to give you an idea of how this works. And obviously when you take the tool, you're able to choose a symbol. There's a category and an item, and you can choose the category. So we've got alarm, audio, visual, data, etc. And then in each of those categories there's a subcategory for all of the things that are in that category. We broke them up like this because it's easier to scroll through shorter lists than having a very long list, everything all in the same list. So here's one that I've placed on the drawing, and most but not all of the symbols in these three tools are world based, and that means that they appear at the same size regardless of the layer scale. But you are able to alter the size of them if you need them to be just a little bit bigger using the scale factor here. So if I put 2 in there, then this is going to scale up or down. Now you'll see we've got the category here, so we have the same categories that we just looked at a moment ago, and we've got the various different items in that category. So if I change this to exterior GPO, then it's going to change. WP standing for waterproof, going back to this one, and so on. Now, where it gets interesting is that we have exposed in the Object Info palette, or giving you the option to put any text that is part of the symbol and make it editable in the Object Info palette. So if you wanted to change this to a 4 power outlet, then you can do that simply by changing the number. But we've also added some other options here for convenience sake. So let's just put this over to the side, and we'll change that back to 2 just so we've got something for comparison. So let me rotate this left 90 degrees, and as expected the whole thing is rotating. Now you now have the option here to keep the text horizontal, so that regardless of how you rotate this, rotate it left again, you'll see that the text is always being the correct way up. And with a power outlet, it goes on walls at all different angles, so that can be quite handy. We also have the option to display a control handle, so we can move that text around if just, for the odd power outlet, for example, the text is in the wrong place. You've got the option to move that around. And you also have the option to override the definition size text in the symbol. So you might have defined the text in the symbol to be 6 point, but on the drawing you decided you wanted to have it 12 point. So you can override on an instance by instance basis the size of the text. So just some nice little options there. We also have the option to show an ID, and that's an example of the ID, and once you turn that on you can edit the ID text. Again, this is also something that you can choose to keep horizontal or not. So if you rotate this left 90 degrees, you'll see that with the ID kept horizontal, then this is going to stay in a readable orientation. If I turn that off, then the ID is going to rotate with the symbol. Let's turn the ID off. And actually no, I'll turn that on again. There's one other option I wanted to show here. If you have defined the text in the symbol, like this text here, to have a fill, then you can turn off that fill by checking this box here. So there might be some cases where you want the fill. Let's say if this was on a mid-gray background or some kind of hatch that was making it difficult to see or to read, then you could have the fill behind the text or not. And of course we've created worksheets, schedules for all of these items. So if you want this to appear on a schedule, then you can choose this option here and it will be listed on the schedule. That way you're able to put in some items. For example, you might want to indicate existing power outlets, or you might want to put in things that you actually don't want to list out on a schedule. So you have the option to choose whether or not they're on the schedule. Now the next thing that's quite interesting is that for some of these symbols that you want to see in a 3D view, we have the option to show a 3D representation. Now again, these things are diagrammatic, and as is 3D representation, but with the 3D, if we have a look at that, I'll just go to a top view, you'll see that we basically are just getting, let's actually go to a right ISO view. We're just getting a little box to represent where this power outlet might be on the wall. And the idea of this is that it will allow you, if you create a section through a model, to actually just see an outline. If you're doing a hidden line section, you might want to dimension the height of the power outlet or the height of the light switch or whatever it is. So you can show that on the wall. Again, the 3D has a separate scale factor, and importantly you've got the mounting height above finished floor. So I can set this to say 1200 if that was going to say be above a bench, and this is going to move up and be in the correct location, so that when you cut your section you're going to see a little representation there of it, and it's quite useful when you're doing interior elevations. Now the other thing that we can do, which is quite handy, is you'll see we have this ability to choose custom fields, and I can display from 1 to 10 custom fields. So let's display 4 of them, and what's going to happen when we do that is that I now have 4 fields exposed here that I can put in information about this particular item. Now this is a power outlet, so I could put HPM, and the model might be 3456, and the color is white, and the finish is blah blah blah, whatever it is, and then these are going to appear on the schedule. Now you have the ability to set what these labels are by clicking this set custom field labels. So field 1 to 10, and currently we've got it set for up to 6 items, but these can be anything you want, and then once you've labeled them, then you're good to go, and you can use those in the schedule. Notice that we've added this convenience here to apply the labels to all objects in this file, or all objects in the selected category, or whatever. So you've got some options there as to how these label fields will apply. So if I wanted to apply these labels to every electrical services object in the file, then I could just choose that option and it's going to get these changes, so you don't have to go through and set these up for each one individually. And finally, at the bottom here we have select similar objects, and what that's going to do when I click it is to select all of the objects that have the same category and the same item. So this way I could very easily select all of the PowerPoints I placed in a drawing and then turn on this display here and put the manufacturer model, color and so on in there, and I can much more quickly enter the information I need into to the objects that match these ones. So I could do all the light switches, I could do all the PowerPoints, I could do all the pendant lights or the wall surface lights or whatever it is that I'm doing. So the electrical and plumbing services, the plumbing and site services, all of what I've said applies to those as well. But I'll just talk momentarily about the site services, because the plumbing services and the site services have more symbols that are world-based. In other words, they will scale with different depending on the layer scale. So, for example, there are clotheslines, there's some gates, there's some wheelie bins, and things like that. So, with these, again, they're just meant to be diagrammatic. They're not fancy-looking things, just to indicate on a drawing when one of these things is in place. So if I go back to, say, the clothesline and I put one of those in, then this is going to scale correctly, and these don't have a 3D representation in them. Most of the 3D representations are reserved for the cases that I mentioned in these electrical ones. But if you wanted to put in a 3D representation for any of these symbols, you're quite at liberty to do that. And finally, just the schedules. So if you do want to have a schedule, we can go up here to reports. For architect, this will be where you'll choose it. For landmark, you'll choose it in the landmark. Create report, whatever it's called, I can't remember the name of it, but it's up here in this menu. And when we choose this, then you'll see the OzCAD services. So I have to choose electrical services, click OK, and I place that on the drawing. Well, we've only got one object there, but you can see that it's listed. There's one of them. It's a double GPO. It has an ID on it, and obviously you can customize these to be how you want them. But hopefully that gives you an idea. I'm going to have a separate movie that describes how you build the symbols, and some suggestions on how you can place them and use classes and so on.